So here we are again.
We are. Another day, another show.
That's right. We just finished.
Yep.
It was a great interview talking about Delta Prime with Guillaume and Kim.
Yep.
So that was really good. Delta is Grant Prideco's most premium connection that really tries to tackle cost of ownership and savings for the customer, but while still having all the great benefits of like performance that the best pipe connections still have. So
right.
It was really sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think it's interesting. So, we do a lot of videos for different products at NOV, and like we did the PDC show, and that one I had done a video, so it was like, oh, I know a little bit more about PDC. Right. Whereas you've done videos for Delta, some fun.
I've done several for them, so yeah, I feel.
So yeah, it feels like this was sort of like a reunion. You're talking about that, whereas I'm kind of coming in, probably like some of our audience might be, and kind of learning.
Yeah, well, I never met Kim, so it was good to meet him and hear from him on the Tuboscope side and about the relationship the two businesses have. I thought that was pretty fascinating. Yeah, and just. Because I hear about it a lot. They're always kind of working very closely together. So this was just another example of that to me.
It was a great show, and I think we should bring him on in.
Yeah.
Show the people.
All right. Well, this is a good day. Thank you guys for being here. We'll just start off with some introductions. Guillaume, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thank you, Paul. I'm Guillaume Plessis, and often are referred or called G in the office. That's the way people call me. I would respond to both Guillaume or G, that's fine. And I'm really kind of a guy who spent a lot of years in the drill pipe space, starting with competition and joining Grant Prideco back in 2001, so about 30 years working on these product lines. Yeah. So pretty much very specialized in these product lines.
Right, yes, yes.
Absolutely.
Kim?
Kim Cunningham, the Vice President of Drilling Services for Tuboscope. Been in the industry roughly 35 years now. Mainly working in the inspection and machining side of the business.
Okay.
Yeah. So collectively, we got a lot of knowledge here at the table. A lot of good.
We like to believe so.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're talking about Delta connections and Delta Prime, which we'll get to. Not to spoiler alert, I guess. But before we really get into what Delta Prime is and Delta connections, I kind of want to talk maybe what the philosophy is. So I know a little bit. I know Delta Connections connect. It's lowering repair costs. Let's see, what else do I remember from the videos?
Basically, like improving cost of ownership.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So Delta was introduced 7 years ago now, and that connection has been doing really well there. The main reason and the philosophy, like you mentioned, for that connection was developing a lower cost of ownership solution for, in particular for land, and it has now basically gone into the offshore space as well. That connection has been designed to be more robust than the previous generations of connections and be easy to use and yet deliver the high performance in the extreme torque segment. Yeah. So we have put it out to market. We have monitored for a few years the repair rates for that connection, in particular the recut rates. When we have to repair the connections, there are two types of repairs, reface and recuts. Reface is more related to a proper running on the rig, and you can really control that side more by having a proper running practice. Gotcha. The recut can relate to the design, that's why we wanted to really monitor the recuts.
Gotcha.
And typically we could see that connections about half the amount of recuts the other connections are offering on average. Yeah. With an average around 6% for recuts, when other connections are more in the 10 to 15% area. And we were really happy with what we saw. We monitored that over hundreds of thousands of connections. And we basically let the market adopt the connection, and it has been very popular. And more recently, we started having feedback from some customers that they were not having that great experience on the recut side, which prompted us to look into it some more.
Yeah, I love hearing stories of when we've gotten that customer feedback, and then my question is always, well, then what do we do with that? So that's
exactly, and that's
what did you do with that information?
Yes.
Yeah, I want to know.
So at that point, we went back to this pipe, and we just went where the customer had that pipe. We looked at the connection with our field service people. We dispatched them on site. And we established that, yes, there was something which was disconnected there. So we then engaged Tuboscope And we worked hand in hand together to have a second look at this particular batch of pipe. And we basically came with a very different picture at the back end of it.
I think also like Grant Prideco and Tuboscope, they always, it seems like all the time they kind of go together too. Like there's a storied relationship I feel like the businesses already have.
They're like siblings, kind of.
Yeah, and I wonder if that helps with these types of issues. With like, there's always somebody to go to. There's always like a trusted business within NOV that you're like, well, yeah, okay.
There are strong synergies. Yes.
Yeah. That's great.
Very much so.
So what did y'all find when y'all kind of joined forces?
Well, the one thing that we found, the initial customer request was really extreme. The reject rate was extremely high, over 50%.
Wow.
And what we found was that the actual service provider that was inspecting, along with a third party, really didn't understand the OEM specifications. And when we were able to work with them, we were able to reduce that reject rate from 50% plus, I want to say is closer to 55 to 56. We got it down to 1%.
Wow.
Which not only did we have savings with regards to reduced recuts, but we also had significant savings with regards to product loss.
So it's like people weren't understanding like what this product really was, or how to inspect it, or what the criteria was. They were used to something different. Correct. And this was a completely different product.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, that gets us to think about the root cause. Why are we ending up being here when we have a criteria, and when people follow it and we just have a good success trail, all of a sudden things just basically go south. So it's like, what's happening here? So, and I think it essentially boils to some practices in the industry, the need to have things done fast for once. So a rig is moving from one pad to the next. This is an opportune time to have the inspection done. So you just basically take your pipe off the rig floor, you put it on the racks, you look at it. But you have a very tight window to not slow down the operations to do it. And that need for high speed is forcing the inspection companies to really operate under high pressure. And under high pressure, you may just basically not do what you're supposed to do, like cleaning the connections, removing small amount of raised metal. And the second aspect to it is because the inspector has to feel safe about the decision he's making. It rather basically go beyond and go beneath, because he's concerned that his reputation may be tarnished if he let go something which is not
right. So
good.
there's probably a bias to overcompensate for
Absolutely.
Pipe that needs to be inspected, when really just like maybe a little bit more time or some proper guidelines or procedures would find out, no, this thing is fine.
So actually the procedure allows for some manual repairs in certain areas of the connection, and that's what people don't do, because that is time consuming once again. But the issue of not following the OEM procedure is you end up with more repairs. Actually, you end up with creating costs altogether, costs in multiple ways. You have to truck the equipment now to the repair workshop. You have to pay for a repair, which is, of course, more expensive than the hand touch-up on site. You have also to potentially spend more money, because that pipe's going to go to the workshop in excess of what it should be. The workshop is now saturated with work. Cannot do it quickly. Now you have to wait longer on the rig site. You don't have the amount of pipe you need. You need to either buy more in the first place or rent some in the meantime.
It's a snowball of cost.
Exactly. Everything is snowballing at that point. Yes.
So you get the customer feedback, you do some investigating, find that root cause. Once you've kind of found that where that lies, then where do you go from there? What were the next steps?
Well, the main thing was educating. Educating the industry as a whole. A lot of folks said that they were unaware of the OEM specification being available to the entire market, but it's on the Grant Prideco website. And then working hand in hand, we're starting to see a reduced reject rate. So we think that we have been successful to a point, but we continue to monitor it. Whenever we see rejects what we see as a high rate
Right.
when it gets to our shops now.
Yeah.
One of our certified inspectors are re-looking at those connections. The key factor there is trying to always reduce the customer's cost of ownership.
Yeah.
And understanding that every time we recut a connection, we're losing roughly 25% of the life of that connection, which is a lot more extreme.
You're taking material off.
Yes,
so
sir.
eventually you're going to run out
Exactly.
of material.
Exactly.
I'm curious, I want to follow up on that. I'm curious what that training or what did that process, you said it was the information, the OEM specs are on the website, but obviously people weren't finding it or they weren't seeing it. So were there other things that y'all implemented, like meetings or site visits and having to do in-person trainings, or what did that look like to really give knowledge to people in the field?
Yeah, Grant Prideco has a great team of technical field service personnel that actually go to the rig sites,
Yes.
work with the rig personnel,
Yep.
educate them,
Okay.
and then at the same time working alongside other service providers to ensure that they're following the OEM specifications.
Right. Okay. So it could be the customer who's doing it. It could be a third party who's there as well.
Well,
And you need to. Is that what you're saying?
Well,
I was
what I'm
making a-
saying
Yes,
there is
we-
if
yeah.
you educate the customer, when he goes out there, when he's getting the pipe serviced,
Right.
he's educated to the point that he can say,
Yeah.
are you following the correct
Sure.
Yeah, right.
Because for many years there are service manuals out there, and I won't mention, but everybody follows it as an industry standard,
Yes.
and so they think that ultimately is the specification that everybody should follow in every instance. But when it comes to Delta is different
Yeah.
from what's related in that.
So that document you're referring to is actually based off our procedures.
Correct.
Because our procedures are public domain. We actually have them on the GP2Go application. And there are reasons for that, because there are a lot of inspection companies worldwide, and Tuboscope is not in every location also. So we need to have that readily available for people in the location where the pipe is being used to run the inspection. Then this reference document, which Kim was referring to, is basing itself off our procedures. It's very aligned.
Okay.
It is just that sometimes there are practices that people have developed over time which are going beyond the requirements. And once again, you go beyond, you're in a safe space.
Right.
But the problem is when that beyond starts costing a lot of money and derails the lower cost of ownership of the
It's
program.
tough when you're the first.
Yep.
It is.
When you go through the wall, you're going to get bloody. The first one always does. So, I mean, kudos to you guys for doing the hard work of maybe changing that standard.
Right.
Yeah.
Good try.
Yeah. Cool.
Well, and I mentioned at the top that we were going to talk about Delta Prime. So
Yes.
all this, we've kind of given some history, some context to it. So that's my next question is, we know Delta Connections. What's Delta Prime?
What are we talking about?
Yeah. All that to say. Yeah.
Well, Delta Prime is nothing more than after initial inspection is completed, and the reject rates are not what we find to be acceptable.
Right.
We will follow back up with another inspection to ensure that it's within compliance of the OEM specifications. So thus really trying to reduce that repair cost, but keep it to where the asset is a very usable connection. In the industry as a whole, a lot of inspection companies got really concerned of somebody following up behind them. Well, the easiest way to ensure that nothing will ever be found behind you is to reject it.
Is to not have anything behind.
And it's going to be brand new. But that's really not fair to the owner of the asset or the industry as a whole.
Yes.
So we're constantly trying to improve. We follow up with, like I said, with another complete inspection, and we get the customer involved, the end user involved, and explain our findings. And at that point in time, it's up to them,
Right.
decision which direction we go.
I mean, that's a killer of innovation, is what you're talking about. Like, you come up with new technology or new innovation, and it's a roadblock to progress for everyone.
Yes.
If these procedures are just like thrown to the wayside, and then we're going to reject everything.
Right.
Yeah, that's a bummer.
It is. It is.
Yes, sir.
I think there is another aspect we probably want to mention, Kim, is when you run a prime inspection, you will not always have as drastic a case as the first
Sure.
one we referred to.
No.
The reclassification percentage is typically not a 55% to 1%.
Yeah.
Correct.
It would be more like a drop by half.
Yeah, we're seeing more in the 50% range on changing the initial cause.
Okay.
And
You
there
mean a
could be-
50% reduction? Excuse me.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sorry, Chief.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Okay,
sir.
not like
So if you got 10,
not repair rate. You're seeing a reduction of
Reduction
yeah,
of
okay,
50%.
gotcha.
There is another thing to consider is it could also be a reality. The high rejection rate could be a reality in certain cases where effectively the rig has had a very, very difficult well or very difficult conditions. Or there has been an issue in the operations which led to a lot of recuts need to be done, and the reclassification in these cases may not bring anything. So that's both the extremes of
Yeah.
extreme reduction or limited reduction and kind of an average where the reduction is about halfway.
Yeah.
Correct. And another issue too is it's really educating the industry on how robust the Delta is. Because whenever you've seen premium connections in the past, it's always been it's got to be in perfect condition to work.
Right.
But the Delta is very forgiving
Yeah.
with the thread form and the overall design.
Right.
It's probably the most robust connection in the industry.
Yeah. Wow.
So maybe another word on Prime, and I think
hey.
it's important to mention that we have developed Prime as a way to address a concern in the industry, and the general idea is we should not need that service. We are having it because we need to address a pain point here. But if things are acting the way they're supposed to, Prime will always be there as a way to address a concern punctually.
Right.
But hopefully the industry is going to react and move in the right direction and stop over-inspecting
Yeah.
and creating costs for technology which should not bring high costs to
Right.
their users.
Right. So is Prime like an add-on, or is it like Prime service
Yeah, I was wondering,
comes
how
with
do
does
people
it
need
you
it?
buy Delta and you get Prime service, or how does that work?
So the way I would describe it is you buy Delta and you should not need Prime, but should you need Prime, Prime is there with Tuboscope.
Okay. Yeah.
Correct.
It's there if you need it.
And what we do there with Prime to assist the customers, rather than charge a per connection charge or whatever from a cost standpoint, we actually take a percentage of what the recut would have cost and apply that.
Gotcha.
Again, to where if we don't find anything,
Right.
you don't pay anything.
Right.
But if we do and we're able to save you money, we just,
Right.
rather than charge a direct cost, it's just a part of the savings.
Right. Very nice.
Man, I wish all the technology in life kind of came with that guarantee. Like, you know what I mean? But I love knowing that there's that continued
Right.
relationship and
Yeah, and I was
Yeah.
almost like that. I'm impressed at not only the hard work of developing Delta, but the hard work of following up on making sure
Yeah.
the product is living up to what it can do for the customer. And so I know that's a lot of work to train, to educate. It's a lot to get information out to a whole mass of people.
It is.
Who are in different situations, whether locations in the country or around the world offer different problems.
Absolutely.
So it's a big feat you guys are doing right now.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
And
really
one
cool.
thing I think it's whenever Tuboscope is called to location to perform a typical inspection on a Delta connection, the customer is always getting Delta Prime at the beginning,
Yeah.
so they don't have to worry about it on the backside.
Right. Right.
Right. I think this is an incredible story, again, of seeing from problem, investigation, solution,
Yeah.
and then what next, and kind of showing these two business units working together. I think it's a really,
Yes.
really cool story.
On many levels. Thank you guys for being
Yes,
here.
Thank you
Thank
so
you very
much.
much.
Quite
Yeah.
welcome.
Thanks
Thank
for the
you.
opportunity.
That's awesome.
All right.